further ado, let's get started. I'll pass it over to Consumer Source.
All right, thanks, Shane. Hello, everyone. My name is Marty Rhodes, and I will be your presenter today. If you are not familiar with Single Source, this year we're celebrating our 40th anniversary as a company, and 38 of those years we've been an Infor partner. And during our tenure as an Infor partner, we've built a lot of standard functionality and published a number of applications to support a number of the Infor ERP products. And today I'm here to present IncentViz for smarter commission management. And thank you, Shane, for allowing us to address your customer base. We're going to start out with the backstory on why Single Source developed IncentViz and explain how IncentViz works in business terms. And then we'll actually get into the product for a short demonstration. Now, IncentViz was built out of necessity. Although CSD is able to generate commission and rebate records using simplistic calculation formulas, well, we found that most organizations have more complex needs and require a more sophisticated solution to manage their annual sales plans, individual quotas, track sales performance, and manage commission and rebate payments that are due or have been paid. And IncentViz was built to provide a direct conduit between all of these requirements and work transparently with CSD. Now, IncentViz was created to address the needs of three primary roles: accounting, sales managers, and sales agents. Let's take a look at the challenges that each of these roles face. We're going to start with accounting, and in 95% of the companies that we work with, accounting, finance, or HR is responsible for creating and maintaining the commission and rebate systems that are used by their company. And our surveys indicate that more than 60% of these companies deploy these solutions using spreadsheets. Now, those that are responsible for the calculations and report generations or generation of these reports know it can take many hours or even multiple days and even multiple people manipulating these spreadsheets to prepare the reports. And unfortunately, due to the manual manipulation, this can be very error prone. With the inherent approval process built into IncentViz, the process of commission and rebate preparation, review, and payments, or the review of the payments can be separated between sales management and accounting and can be done in real time rather than waiting until period end. And this allows for timely maintenance of sales and commission and rebate data that need to be adjusted for either credits that are earned or payments that are due. And for the accounting department, this saves time, significantly increases data quality, but it also provides full transparency between accounting and the sales force, building in addition to building a database of historical activity, and thereby improving the goodwill between accounting departments and the sales force. Now, we recently conducted and published a benchmark report on the use of in-house commission management systems, and you'll notice some of the statistics in the lower left-hand corner. We found that 67% of survey respondents indicate that they have 2 to 3 individuals involved in the preparation and approval of their commission payouts and the rebate reports, validating that this is time-consuming and an expensive process. And only 60% are satisfied with the accuracy of their system. And you might think that with the sensitive nature of someone's personal earnings that this number would be higher. And then finally, 53% of those surveyed indicated that their number one challenge was the time required to prepare and report on commissions and rebates. Now, when we look at sales managers are usually responsible for building sometimes complex annual or quarterly sales plans, and then breaking these plans into individual quotas or targets and defining the commission calculations for these quotas. Now, unfortunately, within the CSD, there's no integrated tracking of the ERP data with sales performance that also aligns with the sales plans and the commissions. So for most organizations and therefore sales managers, the sales performance and the commission management is typically done in separate reporting systems and also in spreadsheets, which again can be error prone and also time consuming to manage. We found that these manual systems lack the ability to provide real-time visibility, and the reports aren't usually available until after the end of a period. The benefit of IncentViz is that it provides a framework that links your ERP data to the incentive plans, the quotas, and then the commission calculations, so that sales managers can easily monitor sales performance in real time and ensure that the data quality is maintained from the transaction all the way through to the commission. And again, I'll share some of the results from our benchmark survey. 100% of the respondents indicated that they do have complex incentive structures that are not supported within their ERP system, and only 46% of them are satisfied with the ability to support their structures. And then finally, 47% are only 47% are satisfied with the amount of time that it takes to process and report on the commissions and rebates. And all of these support the challenges faced by sales managers. And finally, what do these spreadsheet-based systems or in-house systems do for sales agents? Our customers tell us it creates distrust in the system, and the time necessary to create the commissions and track their results can result in reporting delays. And in most cases, we have found that sales agents usually end up creating their own spreadsheets to track their personal performance and their commissions due. Again, the benefits gained by implementing IncentViz is that it provides the framework for sales management and the sales force to manage the sales plan and the quotas and the commissions, and significantly increases that data quality due to the direct database connection. It also provides both management and the sales agents real-time details that reflect sales performance, as well as the commissions that have been paid or are to be paid, which again improves the trust between the sales force and the system. And the final set of benchmark results that I'll share with you today, only 20% of companies surveyed provide real-time reporting to their sales force. And when we talk to salespeople, they really want to know three things. How much have I sold? How much have I made? And when am I getting paid? And 80% of the respondents provide the commission and earning reports either at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, which means the salespeople have to wait to get their reports, to get their questions answered. And also, finally, 40% of the respondents indicate that the complaints from the sales department or the sales force is one of the top 3 challenges they face with their existing systems. So now let's start looking at the product. This is just a screenshot of the login screen, and IncentViz is a cloud-based solution hosted by Microsoft Azure. It is not written in the CSD, the Infor CSD tool set. It is a standalone application, but we do have a native integration with Infor CSD using the secured socket layer embedded in the Infor REST API. Getting a little technical there, but just know that all of the data is that passes between your CSD system and IncentViz is encrypted and is fully protected by the security measurements provided through our Microsoft Azure hosting. Now, this graphic represents really just a simplified version of how the system operates. So what you see on the left-hand side is your Infor CSD system. You've got your ERP data, your CSD data, which I'll talk about here momentarily. And then a connector is installed or is installed on the in the cloud, on the Infor cloud system, and then the data is passed in real time over to IncentViz, and then IncentViz receives the data. And I'm going to talk about the data elements that are passed over here on the next slide. But IncentViz takes that data and really synthesizes or distills it down to a very finite set of data, which resides in the IncentViz database. So when the calculations and all of the data that you're going to be seeing, the reporting that you're going to be seeing today, it actually happens on the IncentViz side of the diagram that you see here. One of the other things I want to bring to your attention is that we have found that many companies have custom data. They either have data in their ERP system or they have data in their spreadsheets that will help determine, one, is a transaction commissionable, and two, or rebatable, and two, you may use that data in the calculation of the payment that it needs to be created. And what this screen on the left-hand side depicts, when you see the custom data there, that if you are using custom data today, and again, if you're using spreadsheets, for IncentViz to be able to utilize that custom data does need to reside in your CSD system, and then IncentViz can access that data through the native interface. It's not no customization needs to be done to the interface. Just through our native data mapping, we're able to access not only your standard CSD data, but also any custom data that you have in that CSD database. But again, if you don't have that data, if you are using some type of lookup tables or index tables within spreadsheets for IncentViz to access or utilize that data would need to reside in your CSD database. All right, let's take a look at some of the data sets. So we're going to be passing, we do an initial data load. So when we connect IncentViz to CSD, we're going to preload all of these tables. So we're going to pull across your customers the salespeople, because those are the folks that are actually transacting the orders. We're going to be pulling across customers because they are the ones that are placing the orders, or in some cases, maybe the entity that's receiving the rebate. We're going to pull across your item master, your product database. We're going to be pulling across your sales orders and lines and invoice and lines. And for those that know, the record, there's only a single record within CSD. It's a combination of the sales order itself and invoice data. But once it gets across to IncentViz, we do separate those into individual transactions, and you'll see why here in a little bit when we get into the demo. And then finally, we're going to pull across the code table, what we call the code table. So those are things that some companies use to, again, determine whether or not a transaction is commissionable. And they also may utilize some of that code data to determine what the calculation is going to be. And when I refer to code tables, I'm talking about things like maybe on your customer master, maybe you've got utilizing the territory field or the region field. On the items, the products, you've got product categories, product codes, product lines. So all of those are in lookup tables within CSD, and we're going to pull across those code tables so IncentViz is capable of utilizing that data. And as I mentioned earlier, any custom data that you have, we're going to be able to access that data as well. All right, so let's talk about, and again, in business terms, how IncentViz works. And I mentioned a couple of times, once we preload the data, anytime that an order or an invoice is transacted in CSD, that transaction is going to come across in real time to IncentViz. And IncentViz is going to interrogate that order or that invoice, and it's going to create a commission, a bonus, a rebate, or a royalty when some condition is met. Now, some companies pay a commission or a rebate on every transaction. Other companies might pay that rebate or a commission based on the order type or based on who the customer is. Maybe it's a house account, and it gets treated a little bit differently than a non-house account. It may create a commission or a rebate payment based on the territory or the region that customer resides in. It may be based on a product or the product code or the product line, or it might be based on some custom field that we talked about. So the very first step that occurs is when that transaction comes across, a payment is going to get created. And moving to the next bullet point here, it's going to get created in the amount of, and that's going to be based on your business, your business rules or your policy setup. Some companies might just pay a fixed amount based on the qualifying transaction. Most companies have some type of formula calculation that they're using. And in IncentViz, we support a formula calculation based on the price, based on the margin, based on the margin percentage, based on a metric. So maybe based on the quantity that's sold, or we've got a customer that does it based on the pounds of the product that is sold. We can also do adjusted quantities as well. And what I mean by that is some companies have an adjusted margin percentage. So you get your standard margin on the product, but maybe there's an extra 1% or 2% overhead that is added to that margin that they want the calculation to be based on. So we can get real. We know you get real creative, and IncentViz in most cases can support those requirements. Now, when that payment is created, it can be based on or paid to an individual, which most commission programs, they're going to pay the salesperson. But we can also support splits. That happens very commonly where maybe you have overlapping territories, you have shared accounts. So IncentViz will support splits. We support something what we call a pool. So maybe the customer service department gets a small percentage of every transaction that is sold by an individual. So they're not getting a split per se of what the individual makes. They're getting their own small percentage, maybe as a variable compensation piece for the performance of their department. And then finally, we have another factor we call share. So someone gets a share. It's kind of like, all the people in the pool might get a small portion, but a share is typically more applied maybe to sales management. So anytime an individual transaction is processed, maybe sales management gets a share of that, again, individually, as maybe part of their compensation plan, or just a general amount override that they receive on the activity that's performed from a sales perspective. So number one, IncentViz is going to determine if the transaction is commissionable. Number two, it's going to create a payment in the amount of some value, and then it's going to hold on to that amount. It's going to hold on to that payment, and it's going to check for the payment condition, and it's going to release that payment after some condition is met. And the conditions that are typically followed are, as soon as that payment record is created, it's going to get released right at booking. So some companies pay their salespeople on bookings. Others will wait until the invoices is created or processed. Other companies will wait until they receive either partial or full payment on that outstanding invoice from their customer before they will release that commission payment to the corresponding representative. So once that payment is then qualified to be released, it's going to be scheduled, if you will, and paid on some date in the future. Now, typically that normally means companies process their commissions on a monthly basis. So it's just going to get picked as soon as it's eligible. And it meets the above condition that I just talked about being released for payment. It will get picked up during the monthly commission processing. Some companies wait and do it at the end of the quarter. You're able to schedule it where maybe you say you want it 90 days from the date the order was placed, or you want it on the 15th day after the end of the quarter, or the March 31st, or excuse me, March 1st after the end of a fiscal year. That's very common for companies to go through their end year processing, do a true up, and then pay out whatever remaining commissions are owed. So you have that ability to schedule when that payment is actually going to occur. And then finally, I talked about a little, I've been focusing on commissions and rebates, but also IncentViz supports bonuses, royalties. If any of your organizations have some type of vendor or supplier relationship, where every time you sell one of their products, you owe that company back a royalty. So IncentViz is capable of supporting the royalty functionality or royalty requirement. We also do burdens. Some of our customers actually calculate what the commission due is for the period, and maybe there's some type of deduction or some type of burden that is placed on that overall amount, and then ultimately subtracted from the amount that's due for the final net payment to the receiving party. And again, that could be an internal rep, that could be a third-party manufacturer's rep, that could be a buying group that's receiving that rebate. And then finally, IncentViz also supports draws. So if your company does, maybe you've got a new sales rep or planning a new territory, and you want to guarantee them a certain amount, we do both recoverable and non-recoverable draws. All right, this is just a sampling of some of the customers and the industries and the volumes that they are utilizing or creating, if you will, in their use of IncentViz. And I talked, we're really focusing on CSD for this particular presentation, but this product is Infor focused and supports a couple of other Infor ERP products. And really what I want to draw your attention to here is the far left-hand corner. You'll notice, or column, you'll notice the number of invoices per month. So that's the volume that these companies are processing on a monthly basis. The second to the right column, the payments per month. And you'll notice some of these are higher than the invoices per month. And that typically means that there's multiple people are being paid either through splits or shares. And also all of these companies came from worksheet-based systems, and you can just see, as a company starts to scale up and they're dealing with 10,000 or 20,000 payment records per month, that can get pretty overwhelming. But also, as I mentioned, it can also be very error prone. And I'll just take a moment. We've had 2 companies that we've implemented IncentViz in that when we went through the validation process, the final user acceptance testing, we were reconciling to their legacy system, to the system that they were using at the time, again, worksheet based, and the systems weren't reconciling. And what both companies found was that they had errors in their worksheets. They gave us the business rules, and we calculated the amounts that were due. They differed, and then lo and behold, when they looked into how their spreadsheets were calculating, they were calculating them incorrectly. And one of the companies was overpaying their reps on the order of tens of thousands of dollars a year. And so IncentViz paid for itself before it was actually even deployed in that particular company. All right, let's get into the application. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a cloud-based application. It's browser-based. I'm running in Chrome, and I've already, just in the interest of time and keeping a kind of a clean workflow here as I move through the application, I've got a number of tabs open. What you're looking at is the primary interface, and I've logged in. I'm logged in as a super user, so I'm going to play the role of all three roles that I talked about earlier. So I'm going to have my salesperson hat on. So I'm going to demonstrate what the interface would look like to a salesperson, to the sales manager, and then also to the accounting or finance department, HR department, whoever will be responsible for processing. What you're looking at here is just a list of plans. So, and that's what we call them in IncentViz. So when you define a compensation plan, an incentive plan, a commission plan, or a rebate plan, whatever term is used within your organization, we're going to refer to it as a sales plan in IncentViz. And I've just got a sampling here of a number of different types of sales plans, and within an organization you might have different types of sales plan. You might have a sales plan for an inside rep, which is different than an outside rep, which is different than maybe a third-party manufacturer's rep that you use. And also you would have different plans based on the effective date. So we're looking at 2022 plans here. And as you would move into your next fiscal year, you could go ahead and set up in advance your sales plans, and they would not be effective until that start date hits. And that's how IncentViz really, I talked about, it interrogates that order or that invoice as soon as it's committed to the CSD database. And the first thing it does is it looks at the transaction date. And if that transaction date is between the current start date and end date of any of your effective plans, then it's going to interrogate that transaction against each one of those plans to determine, again, one, if it's commissionable or rebatable, and then if it is for that particular plan, it's going to create that payment transaction that I talked about. Now today we're just gonna, I'm just gonna pick one here called product code that typically is pretty common or pretty relevant to many organizations. And we called it product code for demonstration purposes in CSD. You've got product categories, you've got product lines, so you could use those data elements for as an example. And I'm just gonna quickly go into this product code plan. And I'm not going to get under the hood too much, but this is what a plan looks like in IncentViz. So we've got the plan title, a little bit of header information here in terms of a description of what the plan is for. And then we're going to set that effective date that I talked about. And then once we set up this header information, we're going to assign people. Many times you have the same sales plan for multiple people. Their numbers might be a little bit different, which I'll talk about here momentarily, but we're going to assign multiple people to the sales plan. And then in this case, each of these individuals have different quota amounts based on the product they're selling. So we've set this particular product plan up so that it's compensated differently based on the product. So a person could sell accessories, consumables, or machines. And let's go in. We're going to focus on the demonstration here is going to be on Rodney Watkins, and we're going to go into the accessory quota and see how these buckets are set up. So as I mentioned, each individual is going to be assigned a quota. The standard quota we're going to say is $750,000. But you'll notice down here it's different for Rodney for whatever reason. Maybe a different territory, maybe he's just getting started, but you're able to set up those unique values by individual. I'm going to go back to the plan now and just continue on down. So once you set up your quotas by individual, then we have to set up the logic. And that logic are those conditions that I talked about. What makes a transaction commissionable? And I'm just going to, again, click to drill into accessories. So we're going to look at the logic. Oh, my system's a little bit slow here. There we go. And again, a lot of information here in terms of how the condition is set up. I'm not going to go into that detail, but what I'm going to show you just very simply in this case, this transaction is commissionable when the product code or the product category equals accessories. So that's a very simple condition. It's configured with inside of IncentViz. IncentViz, again, as soon as that order comes across or that invoice comes across, it's going to interrogate that transaction against every active sales plan, against every condition, and determine whether or not that transaction meets any of those conditions. And then again, if it does, it's going to create that payment. Now, in this case, if that transaction does meet the condition because it was an accessory that's sold, we've got a one-to-one relationship set up here. So anytime an accessory is sold, we've got a certain payment calculation that is performed. Anytime a consumable is sold, we've got a different calculation that is performed. And the same thing for machines. So as you can see here, and we're tying it to performance. We're tying this, actually one of these, to sales performance. So in this case, the person's going to get paid 5% of the transaction if they are between 0 and 50% of their quota attainment. So IncentViz will keep track throughout the period. That period could be a monthly period, a quarterly period, annual period, and based on their quota attainment for that period, in this case, they're going to pay 5%. If it's 0 to 50%, we're going to pay 6%. If it's between 50 and 100% of their attainment. And then finally, if they exceed their quota, it's going to pay 10% on accessories. Now, consumables is different. In this case, the company is going to pay them a 3% commission regardless of where they are within their quota attainment, and then 8% on machines. So this just kind of gives you a flavor for the variability and the configurability of IncentViz. Now, I will pause here and take a moment to mention that we cannot support, IncentViz may not support your requirements. And I'll talk a little bit later. One of the very first things that we do, if you are interested in moving forward, is that we do a discovery. And we have in a handful of cases, certain organizations get real creative in terms of how they do commissions. And I can tell you unequivocally that every company that we have worked with does commissions differently. So just kind of a disclaimer, we will want to talk to you in detail about how your commission plans are structured, how your variable compensation plans, be a little more generic about that. And the same thing if you have rebates. If you have rebate programs, we're going to want to know the details on those as well. So again, this is how a sales plan is set up, and then it's again assigned to the respective salespeople that will be compensated utilizing that plan. Now, I'm going to put my salesperson hat on. So if I log in as a salesperson, I'm going to receive this interface. This is a salesperson dashboard. I mentioned I logged in as a super user. So we're looking at Rodney Watkins. So Rodney, again, I talked about, the three things the salesperson want to know is how much have I sold, how much am I getting paid, or how much have I made, and when am I getting paid? So we're gonna, as a salesperson, I can answer my own questions. I don't have to go to accounting. I don't have to wait until the end of the period to get my commission statement. I can come in real time and get this dashboard. And what this dashboard is showing is what have I sold. So I'm looking at the period for the sales plan that has been assigned to me, and I, Rodney, know I can sell accessories, consumables, and machines. So we've just got some gauges here, and I'm looking at the accessory data. So down below are all of the transaction that accumulated during this period that met the condition to be compensated for or to be paid for an accessory sale. So I can see the line level detail. I've got the customer, I've got the amount, I got the invoice number. I can pull up the details here. I get a little more information here. Now, you'll notice that there's some margin information. This is a user configurable setting. So if you don't want your Salesforce seeing costs, that is something that can be hidden. But again, Rodney can say, oh, I got paid for this because it was an accessory sale, and here's the breakdown of all the detail. Just real quickly, the individual can sort on or search for, excuse me, specific customers, specific orders or invoices. This grid view also has the ability, all of the columns have filtering capability, or you can sort and turn the columns on and off in terms of the amount of detail that is that the individual wants to see. Now, the other information that a salesperson typically wants to know is how much have I made and when am I getting paid? So I'm just going to, we're looking at the quotas right now, but by clicking this view payment button, it's going to launch the second view of the dashboard. And here we're looking at payments. So we're going to be focused on April here, or excuse me, August. So here in August, there's a histogram indicating a time period of how much has been earned, how much has been paid. We're up to August here. So Rodney has earned $142. None of that has been paid yet. There's an unpaid amount of $142. However, 102 of that is ready to pay. And the way this one is configured, I talked about earlier, those payments are released when, in this case, when the customer has paid the invoice. So in this case, $102 have been paid. So that met the release condition. So that amount is going to be processed and paid to Rodney at the end of the August pay period. Again, we can scroll down and Rodney sees all the all the payments that are due to him, and they are assigned again at that line level detail. So he can click the detail button, pull up and see again a little more detail in terms of the information related to that particular transaction. Now, I'll bring to your attention that there's a difference here. There's a $40 delta, and Rodney may say, where's that other $40? Well, again, rather than going to accounting or sales management, Rodney can come down into the detail here. And you'll notice here that there's a $40 amount that's due to Rodney, but it's been put on hold, and that might spawn a recall memories like, oh, that's right, the customer sent this information, sent the product back, so I'm not going to, there's a pending return on that, so I'm not going to get paid on that. And I'll take a moment here that IncentViz does process those credits and will negate the transaction or the amount. So once a credit is processed in CSD, that credit will come across into IncentViz as long as it's tied to that credit must be tied to the original invoice. And then an offsetting amount will be created. And then ultimately, if it was a full credit, that credit would net out to zero and then not be paid to Rodney. If that payment had already occurred, if you're paying on bookings and then a return happens 3 or 4 months down the road, then IncentViz again will process that credit and put it to place a negative amount against the overall amount that's being paid during that period. Again, just offsetting that return that happened for the transaction in the past. So very simply, this is what a salesperson will see. Very simple, easy to use. Again, they can answer their own questions and do their own research rather than putting the burden on sales management or accounting. Now, sales managers pretty much have the same access to that, or the same view, if you will, that the salespeople do, but a sales manager is going to have the purview of all of those reports that are all those individuals that have direct report to that particular sales manager. So in this case, I'm the sales manager. I've got these 3 folks that report to me. I can click on their quota amounts. How are they doing against their quota, and then I can get again that line level detail. And I didn't click on Rodney's, but if you change or click on any of these data summaries, the details down below will refresh according to the individual in this case that I'm looking at. And then also sales manager can see what payments for the individuals. And again, just hovering over or clicking on a bar here, I'll scroll down here so you can see the view change a little bit. But as I click on each one of these different bars, the individual data is being updated. And again, if the salesperson calls or has a question about a particular transaction, the sales manager has the same visibility but the salesperson does, but also that accounting will have and may be able to answer those questions. So sales managers, typically in IncentViz, their only role might be defining or providing the information on the sales plans themselves. So typically, accounting and IT will be responsible for setting up the sales plans, and that's after the initial implementation. And I'll talk about this here in a little bit. The single source will do all, do all of the initial implementation. They'll set up all of the sales plans. We go through a formal validation and deployment of the software. Again, I'll talk about that. But eventually, our goal is for an organization to be self-sufficient, and they can maintain their plans themselves. And that's something that, again, typically when we're working with an organization, the accounting people we're working with, and with some intervention from IT typically to maintain the system. All right, so we're moving on to accounting now, and I want to keep emphasizing that all of these transactions are coming through in real time. So neither the sales management don't have to wait till the end of the period to review and approve commission payments or rebate payments. Accounting, working with sales management, that's an activity that can happen daily, weekly, and then once accounting gets to the end of the month, you're going to see here that it literally is the click of a button to prepare the commission reports or the rebate reports. So accounting is going to have just a couple more screens, if you will, that they have access or available. So they're gonna have what's called the credit screen. So those are all the transactions that reflect the sale itself. So when we were talking about the salesperson, we were talking about their quotas and their quota attainment. Well, that's the quota credit that they're getting. So accounting is going to have a form where they see that same line level detail. And actually, there's even more information that they're going to see in that. And I'm going to show you the payment form here, which essentially has a lot of the same information as the credit form, but it also has the payment calculation. So this, again, is just a dashboard. We're going to be processing a payroll, if you will, for August of 2022. And you'll notice the amount here is for $12,826. That's for all transactions that happened for the month, all sales plans that were impacted by those transactions for the month. So we see that the company, those individuals within the company have earned that amount. We've not paid all of that. We've paid some of it, or actually some of it is ready to pay, but we've not paid any of that amount yet. And there's some other logs here that accounting has access to in terms of just monitoring to the performance of the system. Now I'm going to flip over and go into the payment form now. And again, these are all, when IncentViz determines a transaction is commissionable or rebatable, then it's going to create the payment. And this is the collection of payments. So we're looking at a pretty long list here of all the payments. And this is just for the period of August. So I've pre-filtered this down for the August of 2022. But these are all of the individual transactions or all of the transactions that created a payment for an individual. And I'm going to scroll across here, and you'll notice, we've got all of the line level detail. We've got the invoice information. You're gonna see the order information. We see what payment code it came from. So, this particular set of records on the screen here for the accessories, these are for outside sales. Let me scroll back up. If you'll remember, our product codes were machines and consumables. So that's the data that we're looking at here, are the payment transactions that were created once it was determined that order or that invoice was commissionable. So I'm going to scroll. I'm going to look for Rodney's data. So I've already pre-filtered based on date, but I'm going to look for Rodney's data, and I want to bring something to your attention. So I'm going to scroll across there. I'm looking for a particular transaction for Rodney, and it should be in the amount of $40. So here's our $40 transaction, and I'm going to scroll across here, and you'll notice that the calculated amount, so the amount of the transaction was $731, and for that, because it was an accessory, Rodney was getting paid 5%. Which probably means he was in that, or does mean that he was in that 0 to 50% quota attainment. So 5% of 731.76 is 36.59. But for some reason, somebody decided to override that amount. Instead of paying him $36, we're going to pay him $40. Again, this happens very frequently within an organization. They either want to overpay someone for maybe extra effort, or maybe they didn't make the margin, and the calculation still didn't really reflect what the organization wants. So maybe they'll come in and reduce the amount. So just know that that you have the ability to manually override any payment amount, which we've done here. So we overpaid. But then we also put this transaction on hold because the customer canceled that order, and we're not going to pay that. So if I scroll back across here, you'll notice that there is an on hold field. So you have the ability, maybe it's questionable. Maybe you will pay it, maybe you won't pay it. You don't know at that particular time you're getting ready to process transactions for this time period. So you can just put that on hold, and then the next time that you process the commission payments, it will actually then get picked up. So just kind of give you a little bit of understanding of how the data can be managed. And again, this can be done in real time, daily, weekly. Sales management can come in and put things on hold. They can override these amounts. And then when accounting is ready, then they move into the payment processing process. Now, before I go there, just wanted to mention that IncentViz also supports bonuses, monthly, quarterly, annually, can be based on quota, and IncentViz will actually tell the viewer here if a individual made their bonus for that particular pay period, or for that particular period. So you'll notice here, they needed to sell $130,000 for the period. If they did, they would receive their bonus. So you'll notice here they didn't sell anything. Here just over the 130 mark, a little higher than 130, and IncentViz is telling them the quota was met, and in this case didn't meet their quota yet, so that hasn't been paid. But then once that bonus has been reviewed and recognized by the reviewer, that reviewer then can either approve it or reject it, and then that bonus will automatically get picked up in the payment processing, which I'm getting ready to show you here. So I'm going to move kind of the last step here from an accounting perspective. At the end of the period, monthly, quarterly, whatever the case may be, they're going to come into the payroll processing. They're going to give it a batch number, and I'm just going to call this Rodney Watkins 0822. And I talked earlier, it's as simple as clicking the button. So I'm going to click the generate button here, and it's going to ask me, what sales plan do you want to generate the commissions for? And most companies like this feature that they can just process one plan at a time, because many companies have multiple plans. So I'm going to go find that 2022 product code plan. I'm going to run it actually for all salespeople. And we're going to run it for that August of 2022 pay period. And I'm going to generate the transactions. Now, because all of that data already set out there, it was already created, IncentViz did a quick query and came back and said, you know, for this pay period, you owe Brian Simpson $256.39, Jennifer $130, and Rodney Watkins that $102.87 that we saw earlier on his dashboard. If we had any draws or burdens, we would hit the process button here. And then also, if there were any bonuses, they would have automatically been picked up and included here. Once we're done and we're satisfied, I mean, even at this moment in time, you still have the ability to do a quick review and remove or put anything back into the hold status, if you will, if you desire. But once that final review is performed, we're going to hit the finalize button, and that locks down the payments. It shows them as paid. No other changes could be made to them. And then once the finalize process has completed, then you're able to run payroll reports or the commission reports. And I'm just going to pull up. We actually kick these reports out to and into Excel spreadsheet format. And then the salesperson can create this report themselves. I didn't draw it to your attention, but I will here in a moment. Here, there's a statement button on the salesperson dashboard. And so again, all of the line level detail. So we're looking at all of the data that corresponded to an accessory transaction in this first grouping. And if we scroll clear across, we get all of the order of the line level detail. And then if you have custom fields, we can include those on the commission statement as well, because again, sometimes those custom fields play a role in determining whether a transaction is commissionable or not. Here we see the the consumable transactions, the machines. We get some subtotals here showing Rodney was paid the $102.87. If there were, any draws or burdens or bonuses, those would also be depicted here in the summary amount. So let me go back to Rodney real quick, and I'm going to go to the payment transaction. You'll notice here the ready to pay was $102.87. That's what he received. I'm going to refresh my dashboard. It thinks I'm logged in as me. I'm going to go back to Rodney here, and we'll look at his 2022 data. And I realize I'm about 5 minutes away. We're going to be wrapping up here. All right. Draw your attention back to the middle of the screen here. Rodney earned the $142. He has now been paid $102.87. And again, that $40 is still outstanding. Eventually, when that credit comes through, that will net out to zero and then no longer appear in his dashboard. But he will see the offsetting transaction here as a negative $40, a negative $40 payment. So with that, I'm going to jump back into my slideshow and share just a couple of more things with you, and then we will answer some questions. If you want more information, you can visit IncentViz.singlesource.com, singlesrc.com. You can our most recent published document is the 2025 survey results. It is some pretty interesting reading, so I encourage you to download that. But you can also find some white papers and on-demand videos featuring some of the demonstration content that you saw today. I mentioned our implementation process. Companies ask, how long does it take? And it typically takes, if you're paying on monthly pay cycles, typically we can get you up and live in about 90 to 120 days. We do take a very formal approach in terms of deploying the software. We utilize our single source milestone methodology. These are the 5 milestones: the project planning startup. System definition is when we're going to set up your sales plans, teach you how to use IncentViz. We go through a piloting phase where you will do your sales plan testing and validation. This is where formal user acceptance testing occurs. And then we have a very short go live preparation period where we just kind of reset the database. There is no big bang. So basically, when you decide that you're satisfied and all of the validation has occurred with user acceptance testing, we just pick a moment in time. And once the database is reset, you just start using IncentViz. So we would move you into go live phase. We support you for a couple of months to get you through your first couple of months of reconciliation. And all of this is typically done just as I talked about, accounting and IT. Sales management can be involved during the implementation, but we will typically wait and roll out to the sales force after we go live, because what we found is it takes a couple of cycles to make sure that all of the any refinements that are remaining, and then accounting is satisfied with the results. So we'll typically do final end user training about 2 months after go live, and then we move you. We move you into optimize, where the software includes support and maintenance releases. We do monitor your system performance. As I mentioned, our goal is to get you self-sufficient. But some customers do ask us to maintain their plans for them, so we will do that from a services perspective. That's not included in the pricing. When we talk about pricing, IncentViz pricing includes unlimited users, unlimited sales plans, and rebate programs. And we base the pricing on the number of invoices and orders that you process on a monthly basis. So I talked about that earlier and showed you some of the numbers. And the pricing is also based on the number of and complexity of your sales plans and your rebate programs if you offer those. So unfortunately, we don't have a published price list, if you will, because every deal is different, and it includes the implementation. And I talked about, single source will do the initial implementation, taking your team along in stride with us, and all of this is rolled up into a single affordable monthly subscription fee. If you're interested in any next steps, you can contact Shane. And I talked earlier, the first thing that we will want to do is schedule a discovery with you and have you explain to us how your compensation programs are structured, rebate programs. And it's a pretty detailed conversation. We have a questionnaire we will take you through, takes about an hour. And then at the end of that, we will typically know whether or not we can support your requirements. And if we can, and it makes sense, then we'll move forward with a customized demo, specifically structuring the demo to support your sales plans and your requirements. So with that, I know we're at the top of the hour, but happy to take any questions that have been presented to